So we went over to Hong Kong, we set up all of this software for all of their locations and that sort of thing. And while we were doing that, we were just struggling so much with the software going, man, this is so broken. And, it's so cumbersome and it was built on old .NET technology. And we're like, oh man, this is hard, right? And then that project finished, we delivered it successfully, but we didn't feel good about it because of the software that it was on. And so the startup we were in did finally run out of cash. And me and one of my colleagues in there, who is now my co-founder, were kind of like, well, what are we going to do? We worked well together. He's like super smart guy, a very good coder, has been, coding for, systems for Toyota and all of that sort of thing over his career. We have very complementary skills. And we just thought, well, we know a lot about co-working now. We've just done this big project in it. We've seen the gaps. Why don't we try and build something? And so that's how we started.
We're all part of this whole money game. This all.
Welcome back to another episode of Beers and Business. I'm Abe Dearmer, CEO of Assembler.
I'm Andrew Martin, CEO of Teamgate CRM, and today we are speaking with James Brouard, who is the co-founder and director of Hamlet. So we're gonna have a good conversation. We'll go
serial
through
entrepreneur. So
serial
Andrew tells me.
We'll go through our weekly wrap up. We'll obviously get into James's story, and then we'll talk a little bit about Hamlet, and then also just his experience as a founder and working in the startup space. But as always,
welcome, James.
Welcome. And,
thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks for inviting me.
No worries. What are we drinking today, Abe?
Well, I don't think James is drinking because he doesn't want to be frowned upon in a share space at 9 a.m. smashing beers.
It looks a little bit odd, isn't it? They do have a beer fridge here, but if I just started hoeing into it,
is this guy got a problem?
Yeah, and they are linked to our investors as well, so some news might travel back. Maybe
James just sneaking out of home on a Friday to get some 8 a.m. beers.
Yeah, maybe I could sneak some into the bag on the way out or something. And go drink them in the car like a proper, guy.
But today we got our range brewing once again, and we got our hazy pale ale. So this is the Disco, is what it's called. So
Disco.
Yeah, Disco is a fresh and hazy pale ale that's been double dry hopped. No idea what that means. For an extra hit of melon, passion fruit, and zesty orange. So can't wait. Look at that. How hazy is that?
There you go.
So
Make
hazy.
sure I'll get the.
Looks really beautiful.
Look at that.
Got
Andrew.
It reminds me of the days back when I was overseas, and one of the first times I went to Germany, and there was just like an old geezer on the train at it must have been about 8:30 in the morning, and he's just there casually drinking a tinny, but he's in a full suit and everything. But that's just their culture there, right? Like you walk past the cafes and they're just smashing beers at 8:30 a.m. At the cafe. Who needs a coffee when you can have a beer?
When you got such nice beers like they do in Germany, you can understand why they're smashing beers at 8 a.m. in the morning.
Oh yeah, I think it'd set the day in the right tone, really, as well. It's like
exactly.
I can deal with shit now.
Well, that's why we do it at 9 a.m., right?
This is late for us. We're usually a bit earlier. Sometimes we get US guests on, James, and it's a 5 a.m. beer.
Wow.
Yeah, a couple of episodes ago, Abe stitched me up. He put a survey out to our listeners to ask
put the survey on, mate.
Which beer I should drink. And, of course, they picked the beer that was like 2.5 standard drinks or something.
Let's just be fair. You put the survey on. I went and told multiple people to vote for this beer.
You rigged it. But
I must say, this XPA, this hazy XPA, is actually really nice. Sometimes when you get there, it's not hoppy.
Yeah,
hoppy.
Hazies are a little bit, but it's good, smooth.
Nice.
I don't know if I can really get the melon, passion fruit, and zesty orange flavours coming through, but that's probably just my caveman-like palate.
Yeah,
that's coming to the front there.
It's funny that beer turned into this thing like wine, right? Where beer in Australia it used to be, oh, what do you drink? Oh, I drink either BP or Full Rex or Tui's, and that was about all you had. I'm talking back in the 90s when I first got into drinking, and now it's just exploded. This whole craft beer scene, influence from America and that sort of thing. And you go into such detail now. It's like, oh yeah, I smell a bit of elderflower, right? It's a bit ridiculous, but it's also a bit of fun.
Yeah, that's why I read off the can. You know.
Yeah. We started pretending we were beer experts, and we gave up after about episode 2. We just
And then we realised
this tastes
that,
good, this tastes shit, this tastes great.
And we realised that Range Brewing and all the other craft breweries out there put the tasting notes on the back because
for idiots like us.
For idiots like us.
I always fantasized about opening a brewery, but my palate, I don't think, is mature enough on beer because I just like all of it, and I just go, oh yeah, it's nice, it's a nice beer. You know?
Yeah, I'll drink 10 of them. That's fine.
I don't really have too much else to say about it with all these florally notes and everything, but it's just like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good beer. So yeah, I don't think I'll be opening a brewery anytime soon.
Oh, you never know. You never know.
Too much competition these days. All right, let's jump in. Learnings of the week. We'll go through our learning of the week, quote of the week, before we jump into James's story. What do you got?
Let's get in.
What do you got, Abe?
So my one is stock markets love a good rally on a US election, right? I think
Nice
historically, you know, by the time this podcast comes out, a bit of air in between the two. But when you look back at US elections and stock markets, they rally pretty hard. I think Bitcoin was probably the big winner out of the Trump election result, which is pretty exciting to see. China was a bit of a loser out of the result of the US elections, which was expected. But I think for us as Australians, and, you know, we're all here passing from Australia for this week, you know, sometimes we get people from the US and elsewhere on, but I think it's really interesting times for us as we move forward because if, you know, if some of the stuff comes true about what the plans are with the US side of the economy and what it does to China, that's going to be really interesting to see what happens to us because we're heavily wed to the Chinese economy. So I think it's very interesting times for everyone. I'm glad the election is over because I was sick of seeing all the news just covering US elections. I've logged on to The Australian, which for those who, you know, don't know, it's a newspaper in Australia called The Australian. And literally it took me 2.5 screen folds to get down to an article about Australia. The rest of it was all about US politics and the US election and everything else that's going on there. So very happy that it's over, but very interested to see how it's going to affect us in Australia as we go forward.
Yes, it was. It's already shoved down your throat, isn't it? The American election, so you can't avoid it, sort of thing. Obviously, it does affect all countries, all economies, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I did hear that, you know, it's going to be a new golden age for America because they're bringing everything back onshore, right? You know, they're trying to do that. And so they're going to, no matter, even if, you know, the kind of political system fails there, in theory, they should do all right because they're going to, you know, grow GDP and all of that sort of thing, right? I don't think, you know, that's going to be the same for Australia because we've outsourced literally everything. Right? We don't really manufacture anything anymore. Everything's gone over to China. And I think that is a bit of a risk, you know. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I actually think that we could end up with as a winner as a result of this in some aspects because if America stops taking Chinese goods or the demand falls for Chinese goods in America, there could be a supply issue where there's an oversupply of Chinese goods and therefore our goods in Australia drop in price as a result of them looking for a home for those goods that would traditionally go to the US but now have to spread elsewhere.
Yeah, so even cheaper Chinese stuff, right? Chinese-made stuff for us, right?
Yeah. But exporting might become, it depends what he does with, obviously there's going to be tariffs on Mexico and things like that. If that comes into play for Australia as well, then might be there might be some negative spins, but we'll wait and see. Mine, and touching on the presidential, you're lucky you don't live in Queensland, Abe, because we've gone from the Queensland election, which was all over our news, that finished straight into the US election, which has been all over the news. It's like, far
Next
out.
up, we'll have the federal election. Yeah, that'll get announced soon.
I just don't watch the news anymore. I just watch Peppa Pig with the kids. But anyway.
Yeah, perfect.
My learning of the week is don't ask, you won't get. So been doing a big referral push as well as, you know, asking customer reviews recently. In the past, and we've spoken about this on previous podcasts, you know, we spoke about, you know, tradies putting this into their process with, you know, whether it's a business card that asks for a review after a call, things like that. And we automated a lot of it via emails. Once, you know, you get a happy customer, you send them an email. But I think the power of asking person, you know, it's hard to do face-to-face with me when I live in Australia. Most of my customers are in the US. But if you're on a Zoom call and you've, you know, when that customer's at their happiest, you've helped them solve a problem, or you've helped them review their analytics or something like that, ask them face to face. Like, don't send them an email after and say, hey, thanks for your time today. Do you mind giving us a review? Ask them face to face. Put them in that sort of not awkward position, but just ask them, hey, is there anyone else that you think might benefit from Teamgate services? Or, do you mind jumping online, taking 2 minutes to give us a review if you're happy with our service? And I've really started to make a deliberate effort to do this when I've been on calls with customers over the last 2 weeks, and I'm having a lot of success with it. So yeah, don't ask, you won't get. If you keep automating it or just saying, oh, we need more reviews, do something about it. Go and speak with your customers and ask them point blank. Or if they're not happy, even better, because you're going to say, well, if you're not happy to give us a review, why? What can we improve with our processes and things like that? So that's my learning of the week.
Yeah, nice. I think it's something that everyone can take away and something that everyone can action as well, I think, is the key bit there.
Absolutely. My whole business has been built on referrals, to be honest. So word of mouth is probably still more powerful if, you're not needing to get like thousands and thousands of customers onto your, product. Mine is like quite niche. The word of someone using your product with a lot of clout goes a lot further than any marketing from a nobody sort of thing. Like, it's like when you're cold emailing people or getting cold calls and that, it's like, well, who the hell are you? It's a tough game, right? But if you've got someone who's in the industry that, can go like, oh, hey, I use this and it's great, that's going to definitely mean a lot more than most marketing can.
Yeah, you skip a couple of levels of trust building, right? Yeah, if I trust you and you're saying that something is working for you, or even if you're saying it's not working, then I probably take it off my shopping list. So yeah, definitely a powerful tool and something you can leverage moving forward. What do you got for us, James? Under the spotlight?
Oh, I've got a little bit of a weird one that I just read, that the Y chromosome is at risk of completely disappearing over the course of the next few generations. When I say few generations, I mean like millions of years. But it's a weird thing to think about. I like thinking about these existential crises and that sort of thing, and getting your mind, to kind of get out of like the echo chamber of work and that sort of thing. But it just made me think like, oh wow. What is those like, sci-fi movies where there's whole planets of women and that sort of thing? And it's like, wow, that could actually happen on Earth. That's a pretty crazy thought. So I just thought it was a funny bit of news to come across my feed that makes you, just think a little bit differently about different areas of life and where we're going as a species.
Yeah. That would
was there a reason behind it, James? Is it a medical thing, or is it slowly deteriorating? Is it...
It's actually
people like Abe drinking lattes that
probably
almond milk, mate.
I think it was basically that the Y chromosome compared to the X chromosome is just made up of junk DNA. And that's nice, right? So us men, I've got more shit inside of us, right? And it's just literally doing it to itself. It's just depleting like over time. So so in theory there'll be less and less males as the thousands of years go on. So take that and rattle it around your head and ignore it, because it's not going to affect you at all. But I just thought it was interesting.
Well, from my perspective of my kids, 2 of my 3 are boys, so I think I'm doing my part.
You're doing your part.
Maintaining the Y chromosome, right?
I'm 50-50, but I think my daughter's probably got more Y chromosome than my son, to be honest. She's pretty resilient. He's a bit, but we'll see what happens. Awesome. Let's jump in. Quotes of the week. Abe, what do you got?
Andrew, you're really pumping through them today, mate. Usually you're procrastinating.
We're under a time. We're on a bit of time.
Yeah, we do have a time crunch. Yeah.
Abe likes to waffle on a bit, so we've got to keep him on track, James.
Yeah, okay, mate. Keep it down. All right, so my quote of the week. So this one's from Sebastian Malby from The Power Law. I'm reading it at the moment. Super interesting book, just about venture capital, how it all got started in the US, and really, really interesting stuff all the way through it. But this one stood out to me. Musk's rockets had blown up, but Musk's engineers understood why they had blown up. Failure was a bonus if you learned from it. So I think that's really, really important, is that it's okay for failure to occur. It's okay for things to literally, like the rockets, blow up in your face, right? But as long as you're able to learn from it and progress forward, that's really the key bit. So don't be afraid of failure. Be afraid of not learning from failure.
Nice. And we saw some successes from old Elon recently. Not
He
only
caught a rocket.
with the presidential campaign, but he caught a rocket, and his stocks have recently gone up. I think it went up. Was it 6%?
Tesla.
Made him $6 billion richer since the presidential election. That'd be nice.
He's a real Vegemite guy, isn't he? Right? You know, you either love him or hate him, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, you can't deny that he is what's considered a genius, sort of thing. He obviously has a lot of money, but he's just not scared of failure at all, right? He just
Whether you like his personality or not, he's changing the world.
Yeah.
The fact that, said before, I use Starlink, but the fact that you can connect to all these multiple little satellites in low orbit mode to provide you with reliable, fast internet is absolutely crazy. The fact that he's also launching rockets into the sky at a pace, faster than any other country with all of their resources is amazing. The fact that he is developing like the future for amputees with the Neuralink and his prosthetic limbs is incredible. That sort of stuff that he's doing is he's just finding problems and solving them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my brother just bought a Tesla, actually, literally this week. And I'm very jealous of it, because, the technology in those cars, the self-driving and everything, and, just his process of how he's kind of gone, I want to solve self-driving cars, and then realize, well, to do that, I've got to solve kind of like artificial intelligence. And then he realizes, well, if I've done that for cars, that's going to work for robots, so I'll just do robots as well. And it's just like, it's amazing.
Flies on.
How many different types of businesses that he's just put his hand to and made a very impressive leap, you can't deny that it's not impressive.
And you know what he said on their recent investors report? He has started to talk about flying cars. So the next Tesla round of model of cars could just be flying Teslas.
Finally, we're living in the future. Hey, we've been all waiting
the Jetsons.
For that to our kids.
It's come real.
I remember a little while ago. I think it might have been maybe the first or the second time he went on the Joe Rogan podcast. But he was saying the future's not in the air; it's underground. Like there's only so much space above ground. He's like, there's all this space we can use underground, because he was doing tunneling, like high speed tunneling, where it was like.
So, do you know the story behind that?
No.
God, they're just going to turn this into like an Elon Musk fanboy podcast or something, right? But the story behind that is that I think it was in New York. They commissioned a company to build tunnels for traffic, right? Because traffic is horrendous.
They stuffed it up.
And they stuffed it up way over budget, like billions of dollars over budget. Took way longer than expected. He's like, this is bullshit. There has to be a better way to do this. So he made his own company to do it and won his first contract and delivered the project, I think, under time and under budget with his new boring technology. Like, just phenomenal, right? Like, he just sees problems and just goes, I don't agree with that. I think that's shit. And then fixes it, comes up with a better solution, and then off he goes. But I think that's probably one of the most under-discussed things that he's done.
Yeah.
Is that boring technology.
The boring technology. And then I think Neuralink's really, really fascinating. And I look forward to seeing it's scary, but interesting to see where that goes in the future.
You can just get served ads straight to your brain, mate, while you sleep.
We'll move on from Elon. And we'll talk more about me. So my quote of the week is, luck is an accident that happens to the competent. So as Abe knows, one of us in this chat won pretty big on the Melbourne Cup a couple of days ago. Some would call it luck, but
some would call it a random trifecta.
As the
literally the title of the bet,
luck
random
happens
trifecta.
to the competent. It's a mystery trifecta, not a random trifecta.
Oh, there you go, mystery trifecta. Apologies.
So yeah, James, just so you're aware, $3 bet. I won about $11,500,
and that's now all in Charlotte's hands.
Wow.
Yeah,
that new Gucci bag she's going to get is going to be absolutely fantastic, mate.
I was rich for about 27 seconds, and then my wife found out, and I'm broke again. So
that's the best win I've heard on Melbourne Cup. Usually you go and funk all your money away at any horse race, and you get out of there drunk and embarrassed. So
yeah. The best thing I've seen so far is there was a gentleman down at Flemington, and he was blind. And Channel 7 was there, and he'd won, so he was celebrating. And they're like, "What did you win?" And they're interviewing him, and he goes, "I picked the first 4 horses." They said, "Oh, how much did you win?" He goes, "Don't know. I think a couple of $100. And he was hammered, blind, could barely walk. And he walks up and $780,000.
Wow.
And he was just like,
Incredible.
the Channel 7 bloke's like, you want to be friends? Like, yeah. So,
That's so good.
Unbelievable.
So it was good. I'll be putting that money towards the mortgage, unfortunately. But anyway, James, what do you got for us? Quote of the week.
Well, I've got one, funnily enough, by Bruce Lee. Very smart guy, very driven guy, right? You know, very successful at what he did. But it's, if you spend too much time thinking about a thing, you'll never get it done. And they fall into that trap all the time, right? You overthink things, right? You think, oh, well, you know, I'm going to do this, and should I release this feature? Or maybe I'm going to change this and do that. Or, you know, and you kind of get stuck into that kind of whirlpool of thoughts, and you don't even know that if it's going to work. So it's good to just remind yourself, I think, at times that, like, you know, just try it, test it, just do it, you know, instead of getting stuck in that whirlpool of thought and, you know, getting nowhere, essentially.
It's the biggest thing that people fail with is they try to get to the 100% solution without just accepting that 80% will be good enough. And the biggest problem that people have is just starting. That's often the case that they fall into, where they sit there and try to come up with the best idea instead of just executing on the fraction of an idea they have, right? And I think that's where, circling back to Elon Musk and making this about an Elon Musk podcast, he's really good at going, like, there's a problem, I'm going to fix it, and just starts. He doesn't have it all. Like, the first Tesla that came out, it wasn't great. It didn't have all the kinks ironed out, but he launched it. Same thing with, like, Starlink. It wasn't perfect. They knew they needed to make changes. You know, things weren't as they should, but he launched it, right? He went to Twitter and just took action. You know, he's a very action-driven guy. And you look at Frank Slootman, was the CEO of Snowflake, ServiceNow, big successful companies. His book, Amp It Up, he's all about going in and taking action. It's not about sitting back and let's assess the environment. It's about going in there and just acting and seeing what falls out, shaking the tree.
Yep. I definitely think that's you know, going to get you further than, you know, just sitting in a room with your own thoughts, right? You know, it's a bad trap to fall into. So yeah, taking action. If you can find a way to do something faster and just get some feedback, that's going to get you further.
Yeah, use signals, and at the end of the day, especially if you're working in like a customer-facing environment or product. We did it ourselves, Abe, when we were looking at workflows for Teamgate. We were like, trying to get this perfect solution. We're like, at the end of the day, we're like, fuck it, let's just get it out as it is. And the customers are going to give us feedback. They're going to tell us what's wrong with it, what's right with it, where it needs to go. So if you can use customers for feedback, that's sort of even better. But yeah, a lot of us get caught up with the starting. And I was the same when I was at university. I'd do an assignment or an essay in a couple of days, but it was getting started, getting past the actual.
Hey, if you leave it till the last minute, it only takes a minute.
Yeah. Well, some of us need more than a minute to write an essay. Abraham,
I think that's literally how I got through university as well. So I started with you on that. So.
It's a theme. There we go.
All right, let's switch gears, James. Let's hear more about you. I don't know. I feel like I want to start actually with, tell us about Hamlet. Tell us what Hamlet does, and I guess in sort of that space of, have you got a pitch that you tell people about Hamlet, just so we get an understanding about where you are and what you do now, and then I'd like to go into the background and, you know, let's go through the story of how you got to this point.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, Hamlet's an operational software for co-working in flexible spaces, right? So what that means is it's, you know, your member database. It handles, you know, management of your leads, collects your leads, allows you to communicate with those leads. Then you can turn those leads into full member profiles, set up all of their recurring billing for your offices, your desks. It holds all of the inventory for your space, which you can then list on a customer portal, and then sort of have external customers come and book meeting rooms or with live availability and that sort of thing. And also has the internal portal, so members can self-serve essentially. So this kind of goal is, you know, we're saying our goal is 100% automated operations for flexible space, and that's what we're aiming for, right? Because no one really wants to sit at a computer and do all of this stuff in a space when what you really should be doing is engaging with customers, right? Engaging with your members as a space owner or a receptionist or a space leader, as they're called, and that sort of thing. So Hamlet takes care of all of the operational rest.
Yeah, nice. And is it just mainly for co-working spaces? Is that where your niche is at the moment?
At the moment, yeah, all of our customers are flexible workspaces, but we are kind of dabbling into other industries with our partner Wotso. So they have things that they call a health space, which is kind of a working, flex space for health professionals, right? They also have a cook space, which is essentially a bunch of commercial kitchens. So and a storage space. So we're actually starting to expand into different verticals just in a sort of natural way through them. But yeah, predominantly it's workspaces at the moment. But yeah, very interesting industry that, is going in that sort of direction of like, everything being a kind of flexible space, because you would be aware of, starting up any business, if you've got to go in and say you're starting up, a food business, and you've got to go buy a commercial oven and commercial fridges and, storage and all of that sort of thing and work out distribution and all that. But you could go into what they call like a ghost kitchen and it's all set up for you, right? It's, you can get your product off the ground so much faster than worrying about all of that other stuff. So
the overheads become lower, right? Your initial upfront overheads become lower.
Yeah. Phenomenally lower. It's all set up, ready to go, right? You walk into a co-working space, right? And you could turn up at 9 o'clock in the morning, get onboarded in about 2 minutes, go sit at your desk and you're at work, right? You never would have been able to do that sort of, I guess, 10, 20 years ago sort of thing, where everything was more traditional and you had to go find an office and negotiate for it and lease it and then fit it out and then do all those sorts of things. Like, just sounds like a nightmare to me these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like a really revolutionary thing about the times that we live in now, where it's looking at how we can share resources, not just in the workspace, but you look at like the share cars that are out there, how you can, you don't have to own a car. You can just essentially hire a car for an hour, park it up, and then it's done all through an app. Things like that I think is just amazing. I think if we could do more of that sort of stuff, you can see how the economics of it work out, but sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. But switching gears, so Hamlet, how did you get to this point, James? What's your background? How did you get up here?
Oh yeah, I used to run outsourcing companies really from London. That's when I first got into kind of like this whole entrepreneurial sort of journey that I've been on, I guess. Before that, I was in the corporate world of gaming and betting. I was kind of a project manager in the creative team of a big gaming and betting company in London. And I saw an opportunity there where, we were starting to outsource a lot of what we do to kind of agencies and things like that over in Eastern Europe. And I actually started my own outsourcing company while at my current job. And so I was, probably making the best money of my life back then, really, because I was getting paid to be in a job and then also outsourcing to my own company there. There's probably some little legal issues around that. But, we were producing great work, through the company that I founded and the guys that I found. And, we were delivering better than anyone else. So they kind of turned a blind eye to that, and that worked really well. And so once that was going quite well, I actually got out of working full time for that company and then started working out of co-working spaces in London. And that was like back in like 2010, 2011 or so.
How were the co-working spaces in 2010 in London?
Well, that was when WeWork had just started blowing up, right? So they were the poster boys of this whole.
So you had your nitro brew coffee on tap.
Wild.
Yeah, your beer on tap and everything, and that was it was just very exciting to me at that time because what was the traditional office back then? It was a couple of fluorescent lights and it was just so drab and so boring, right? And WeWork, whatever you think of the company and the guy, he's a bit eccentric and he's done some pretty out there things. Have you watched the documentary actually?
Yeah.
Apple?
Yeah.
Is it the TV series? Yeah. I've watched the TV series with, is it Jared Leto and someone else? Anne Hathaway?
There's actually like
There's a documentary on him.
Yeah.
And it's worth watching. It's funny to watch just how quick, he
Spirals out of control.
I mean, he's got a silver tongue, to be able to talk everybody into that amount of money, like hats off to him, he did a great job. But getting a bit sidetracked there. So anyway, I walked into one of these WeWorks and I was just like blown away, right? I was just like, this is incredible. This is great. Like this, I want to be here. I want to go to work, right? Or I want to go to the office, I should say, and for me, that was, incredibly inspiring. And so kind of fast forward a bit, then I moved to Sydney in about 2015 or so, and looking around, kind of tailored down my outsourcing because it was just a bit harder with the time differences back then. And I was sort of losing interest in that industry anyway. And I ended up getting a job in a little startup in Sydney called Recomazing, and they were actually a recommendations engine for software, right? So the best CRMs and that sort of thing. And they were trying to plug their software into co-working spaces. So we were working out of so many different co-working spaces and everything around Sydney. And then towards the end of that sort of contract, the startup was running out of money, as they all do. But we got a big job installing who is now a competitor software into a bunch of locations in Hong Kong. So we went over to Hong Kong, we set up all of this software for all of their locations and that sort of thing. And while we were doing that, we were just struggling so much with the software going, man, this is so broken. And, it's so cumbersome, and it was built on old .NET technology, and we're like, oh man, this is hard, right? And then that project finished, we delivered it successfully, but we didn't feel good about it because of the software that it was on. And so the startup we were in did finally run out of cash, and me and one of my colleagues in there, who is now my co-founder, were kind of like, well, what are we going to do? We worked well together. He's like super smart guy, a very good coder, has been, coding for, systems for Toyota and all of that sort of thing over his career. And, I'm on the other side. I'm more like, the creative side, project management, people side, right? So we have very complementary skills. And we just thought, well, we know a lot about co-working now. We've just done this big project in it. We've seen the gaps. Why don't we try and build something? And so that's how we started. We started with no money, a little bit of savings, and we were actually going around cafes and pubs working in Sydney just to start this thing up and get it off the ground. And we were doing that for probably about 4 months when I went and took a space in Wotso in Bondi Junction. And through a bit of serendipity, on the first day I got in there, I met the data analyst of Wotso, and he was actually installing the software that we just installed for...
You're like, this is terrible. Don't do that. God, you hate it.
Exactly right. And he was like, well, I feel that. I hate this. It's not working. It's really difficult. And we said, look, we've just been through this. We're actually building something better. Do you want to chat about it? And he said, I wouldn't make the decisions on this. Why don't you chat to the CFO? And he introduced us to the CFO and CEO at the time. And that was our pitch, right? We went in and just went, hey, we're building this, and it's going to be way better than that because we've already seen that, we've already done this. And they were like, oh, yeah, I don't really believe you, but, prove it. We'll give you a little bit of cash, So it was like a very low tier investment, a de-risked investment for them. Then we worked side by side with, that was Wotso actually. And so for the first 2 years, we were really, it was literally...
But this is great, right? Because now you've got a customer that's giving you product feedback as you're moving through it, that's driving. It's like, it's the golden, it's a golden opportunity is to have someone like a customer say, great, invest in you, give you feedback on the product and get you moving it forward.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It was an incredible, a chance meeting, really, right? Because we could have, gone along this path without all of their input and their knowledge and that sort of thing. But they're running, some of the most successful spaces in Australia, right? They're, growing at a rate faster than most co-working spaces because they've got a bit of a different tactic. And they've been incredibly supportive the whole journey, right? For the first 2 years, it was just myself and Mitch doing absolutely everything, my co-founder. So, he was doing all the technical coding of stuff. I was doing all the designing of the interface and everything, and going to get feedback and testing. And, it was, just literally all product focused. But we always said, our goal is to commercialize this. And after about 2 years of building, we were ready for that. So then I went out and started pitching it to other companies. And since then, we've had like a consistent sort of stream of co-working spaces, flexible spaces come on board. And here we are now. We're still going at it. We're still growing. Yeah, we've got the support of Wotso behind us, which is great.
Yeah, that's super cool. And to hear that journey, very Musk-esque of you, James, to find a problem and go after it. But choosing when you one thing that people really struggle with when they start out is that there'll be someone who has an idea, but they lack that other half, right? And I think you're extremely fortunate. Either, it was curated by you or you fell into it, as Andrew's quote about luck is an accident, happens to the competent, right? So people really struggle. People who are sales, marketing minded struggle to find a technical co-founder to go along with their vision and where they want to take things. Or they have the other way where it's a technical guy who's like, I've got this great idea, I've built it out, I've already coded it. I need someone to come on board and help me with marketing and sales to get it off the ground because I built this thing but no one knows about it. And so people really struggle with either of those sides, right? I imagine just because you've worked together, just because you've done things together, there were challenges along the way that you both had to sort of overcome with, differing opinions or things like that, I imagine. Is there any insight that you could give people who are searching for that other half, whether that be the technical co-founder or the marketing sales co-founder? Is there anything that you've sort of learnt along the way that you think is important to look for in an individual that could potentially be that other half when you're starting a business?
Trust is the biggest thing, I think, because, at the end of the day, going into business with someone is, it's a big thing, right? There hear a lot of horror stories about, shit happening when pressure is on, right? And people going different ways and taking the company or money or not delivering or whatever it is, But I guess because we've worked together, we already built that trust, right? We built the trust over another project. So perhaps there might be a mini project you could take on together and go, hey, well, we want to do this thing, but why don't we try this first to see how we work together? It's like dating, right? You've got to understand if you're going to gel with that person or not, right? But it is integral that you have that trust between you. And, me and my co-founder, Mitch, we've been through some pretty trying times and that sort of thing, but we always kind of know we've got each other's back at the end of the day, no matter our disagreements and that sort of thing. We have some heated arguments and then cool off for a few days, and that you can come back and talk about it and sort it out, sort of thing. So I think, finding someone that you can just rely on, and that they're not going to stitch you up, like that's a really big thing.
And I think that's really important when you said there about you have those heated arguments and you have those differing opinions. But at the end of the day, you both know that you've got the best interests for each other in mind. And I think it's really funny, right? Because probably the most unhealthy relationships, whether they be, marital or business or whatever, is where those disagreements don't come to the front.
100%.
And that's where it ends up going poorly, right? And I think that's a really important piece, is that if you can't talk frankly and upfront to your partner in business, then I think you're going to have issues as you go forward. Is that something that you would say is like a big part of your relationship?
Absolutely. You've got to try and talk everything out, right? You've got to have clear communication and that sort of thing, other than, your visions and all of that sort of thing. Like, if you just can't talk things out.
What about like calling each other out on your bullshit? Like, it's like, James, you've been slacking this week. What the hell's going on?
Yeah, I mean, we both probably
Not
slack
you,
on.
of course, obviously.
No, never. But there's times that we both have to kind of remind each other, where we want to get to. Like, um, definitely, you have to be upfront about that at times, and it's a bit awkward. There's no doubt about it. But it's a conversation that might hurt at the time a little bit, but we've had them before, and you end up better and stronger after it. So. I mean, I was listening to a podcast the other week about partners. I think it was Guy Raz, the guy from How I Built This. And yeah, his advice as well is like, look for a strong partner in life and a strong partner in business. Obviously my wife has always, backed my crazy ideas and everything like that as well, being along the entrepreneurial journey with me. So it's, the relationships you get into in life and business really will determine your success. So, spend your time on them, go look for that complementary co-founder and that sort of thing. Don't just go, doing everything on your own. You can do it, but it's a lot harder, right? If you can find somebody that can, complement your skills and come on that journey with you, it's just gonna be easier, right? As well, when you're down, they can pick you up. They can take up the slack when you might be, just off and that sort of thing. So having that kind of balance is really going to help you get further faster.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the key part you mentioned is the baseline of trust. Once that trust is established, those arguments, not arguments, but calling each other out or holding each other to a standard it becomes beneficial. Abe and I, we've known each other for a long time, well before we moved into the business world. But at any stage, I can go to him and be like, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking. Give it to me straight." You get that hard truth, right? I know he's not going to bullshit me. He's not going to say, "Yeah, that's great," just for the sake of it. And you need those people in life and in business because if you're got this grand idea and you've just got yes men around you, you're gonna go somewhere that's probably not the right direction, or you need those hard truths sometimes to pull you back online. But yeah, I think trust is the big one. Once you've got the trust, then it's great to have those arguments and that stuff because there'll actually be outputs that come from that. But you've got to establish that trust first to know that the other person's actually doing it for the right reasons and point you in the right direction. I'd love to jump into I guess your founder story and going through your experiences in the founder space and startup space. But before we do that, I'd love just to put a nice bow on Hamlet. You and I had a coffee last week. That's where we met. You messaged me on Facebook.
Cute.
We went and caught up. I gave Abe shit before about ordering lattes. I think I ordered a latte that day, but that's
No, you would have had some chocolate in there or something. You would have had like a mocha.
Vanilla latte.
Yeah,
I know you can't.
Vanilla, yeah, I heard that.
Andrew, yeah, the palate of a 5-year-old.
This beer's pretty good though. But to put a bow on that, so when I went into the conversation, I was like, wow, this is really, really niche. But then as we started to talk and you started talking about those verticals, the health space, things like that, I left that coffee date. We'll call it a coffee date.
Yeah.
And I went to I've got an indoor golf membership and I'm like, this could benefit from Hamlet. Like they have this awesome space where they could have day passes, week passes, things like that. And it just all these ideas started sort of flowing. And one of the things you mentioned to me when we went for coffee was talking about like day passes at a hotel, right? Because there's so much space that's not being utilized where, someone comes and checks in, then they usually just go and explore. There's always conference facilities at a hotel. There's, pool facilities, things like that, where they could be generating more revenue. So before we move on, I'd love to know sort of what's next for Hamlet. Is there anything that you see yourself going into? I know you mentioned the health space, but what else do you think the direction of Hamlet and where it's going?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it's become a little bit of an obsession of mine is to just look at different, industries and areas and look at space utilization, right? We, walk down a street, right? And you could walk past, resorts or hotels or whatever in your city. And you look at that and it's like, well, you shouldn't, it's empty. Why? No, that's not a very good utilization of space. Walk into a building and there's a big foyer and it's empty, right? Walk past a cafe or a pub and at certain times of the day, they're empty. We're not that good yet at utilizing space. And, in the office world, that's an easy one, which is happening now. Like this whole trend of like where companies might have had a really big footprint in a city, in a CBD, right? But since COVID, everyone's gone, well, I don't actually need to go and commute every single day to go sit at a computer silently next to somebody else, right? I can work from wherever, right? It doesn't make sense, right? It's just a drain. So getting better at utilizing spaces should be all businesses' prerogative, right? And the hotel and resort industry is something that I've seen happen, like the better utilization of these day kind of passes, and that is already happening in other areas of the world. And that's where I think there's a big opportunity, and that's what we're actually exploring with a new startup actually called Day Escape. So we're going to be using exactly the same principles as we have for workspaces, where you can go and book a desk for a day. Using exactly the same concepts and technologies, you can imagine going into any of your local hotels or resorts and using the pool for the day, plus the meeting rooms for the day, or the work areas for the day, or the spa for a day. There's all of these resources that are just sitting there, and most of the time, they're concentrated on bringing people in for a holiday. But what do those people do? They get there in the hotel, and they might wake up and they might have brekkie, and then they want to explore the area. They get out of there, and that leaves that resource completely bare. And so there's no one in there using the bar. There's no one in there using the cafe or the restaurant or the pool, and it's just sitting there. But they've got all the staff. They've got everything they need.
Paying staff hours, right?
Exactly. So, but then I put it to you, like if I said to you, it's going to cost you $50 to go and work from this co-working office down the road, or as well, there's a hotel down the road that you can pay $50 and you can work from there, but you can also jump in the pool. To me, like there's different environments for different days, right? Some days it might be like, no, I need this type of environment to work like this. But this day, I want to have an environment like this where I catch up with a mate and have a more casual kind of work day and that sort of thing. So I think that's where, I see the trend going, is that we're going to be a lot more flexible in how we work, and we'll choose what environment suits our particular days.
I think that's really interesting, right? That the hotels are giving away money, and they're doing that by, hopefully it results in me getting a cheaper room or something like that down the track. But at the end of the day as well, one of the biggest expenses in a share space is the real estate. And the hotels already have that real estate that's being utilized, so why not use it? But you could also find that this could be a problem to be solved. And when I think bigger picture, right, I think about the New South Wales government's talking about building high rises in Western Sydney near train stations because they need more housing, and that's the best place to do it. There's a number of issues that come up with it. One of the big things is that regardless of it, if it's near a train station or not, there's not enough infrastructure to get those people into the city to get to work or get to their work locations. But there's probably a few hotels that are around there, right? If you're able to convert some of that space and divert some of that traffic to remote working locations, then, that's a perfect outcome to try and release that bubble a little bit, because most of the share spaces are in the city because that's traditionally where they've been, right? Like it's in Bondi, Northern Beaches, Sydney CBD. But how many share spaces are in Western Sydney? Probably not that many. I don't know, you'd know better than I would, but probably not that many. So that's a really interesting thing. The other part that I look at when you talk about expansion, which I think would be really cool, is what are these companies like Deloitte doing that have turned their full office space into hot desking locations? So many big corporate companies now are like, the office, it's going to be this cool hip place, trying to take a bit of shine from WeWork and make them into, hot desking locations, come in 3 days a week, book your desk, all that kind of stuff. What are they using for booking platforms?
Well, it's a bit of a different kettle of fish, I guess, because they're right. With our platform, our clients are charging all of their members something to utilize the space. Whereas, like, if they've got like this big footprint, they're just paying the rent, right? And then, it's their employees are just booking a desk, right? So they call that like, hybrid or whatever you like to call it. There are different platforms that lean to that, and we might get into that space, but I don't think that is a big trend, right? I think, flexible space is the way to go in terms of even your big Deloittes and that sort of thing as well, right? Because we've seen it in some other larger enterprises where they're like, well, we've got 2,000 employees and we had all of this space and we had a desk for everyone. But then post-COVID, now only like 30% of those employees are coming in on any given day, right? And so all of the rest is empty. So, they downsize. I don't want to pay for rent on all of that. So instead, I'll just go and get a, bunch of credits at, one of these flex space locations and then give that to all my staff. And so then they have the choice, right? They'll be able to go, okay, well, now they've only got an office with 500 seats and they've saved all their rent on those extra 1,500 seats. But then, employees can come into the office some days, they can go to a shared space some days, or they can work from home some days. So, and, after talking to many people from many different sort of businesses, that's what they want. They want that flexibility now because, you're a parent, you've got other things on your plate, and some days it's just not convenient to do that commute into the office or to your co-working space. I have to work from home, but you don't want to be paying for these resources all the time, right? Everything should be basically like a pay-as-you-go service. It's like, use that resource when I need that resource, right? And that's the ultimate in flexibility. So, I think that's kind of, where the trend will be going for the next few years.
Yeah. That's really good. I like that thinking surrounding, how can you make the most of the space that's there?
Absolutely. Yeah, as I said, it's a bit of an obsession for me now. So how you see it in all sort of industries, right? Like some of the spaces that I've seen are really getting on trend in that sort of thinking and making the space very dynamic. So yes, it might be a workspace during the day, but then it switches, and then in the afternoons it's a social space, and there's a bar that opens up, and people come there and have like drinks, after work drinks and that. And then on the weekends it's an event space and that sort of thing. And that's really clever, right? You're just maximizing your revenue for that asset. And that's the mentality that you should be in. I think if you're a space owner or you have any kind of property, right? Maximize the use of it, and get the most you can out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to switch gears a little bit and talk more about your strategy and how you're looking at approaching things, I would say you're probably a relatively small player in the space, in the booking space and reservations component. So how have you gone about trying to differentiate yourself and put yourself in front of people within that industry? Like, how have you adopted guerrilla marketing campaigns? Is a lot of like face-to-face meetings, trying to get people on calls? What's your sort of strategy for getting into the market?
Well, yeah, I put my hands up and definitely say I'm not the best marketer in the world, and we haven't really put much money into it, to be honest. Like, because we're relatively low funded, so most of that goes into product, right, and staff. So you know that's our biggest cost is staff, and we have dabbled in Google marketing. I had my sister come on board, who is a marketer, and got us all set up and that sort of thing, but didn't have much success with it. Because I think, this industry, it's very niche, like you said, and it's not something that you have like, tens of thousands of, people that you've got to try and, grab their attention and get on board and that sort of thing. It's rather, there's only like a thousand odd spaces in Australia that would exist that could use our software at the moment. So it's been more of a direct approach and word of mouth. And going back on your point before, Andrew, on the referrals of word of mouth, I mean, that's been our strongest channel, right? We've got Wotso using our platform to run their 28 locations across Australia and New Zealand, right? So that says a lot already about the software. They're one of the most successful players in the space, right? So just, the CEO of Wotso, right? She will have a conversation at an event, and then people that have heard that own another space would come and then chat to me, sort of thing. So it's been a very sort of organic word of mouth growth so far with Hamlet. But on that, I would say, to start matching up to our competitors, we're going to have to look at other channels now when we want to look at going abroad, right? So our next target is trying to get over the pond, over to APAC, over to Europe and that sort of thing. And obviously we don't have some of the things that make us strong here, which is like, we're an Australian company. We've got localized support, all of these sort of things. Now it's different when you jump over the pond, right? So we're going to have to rethink that strategy going over there.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how you go breaking into that market, especially when you look at APAC in Europe. A lot of things need to be localized. Good work, Andrew.
I was throwing a good chat, but go ahead.
I'm sure you were. Sure you were, mate. No, go ahead. Go ahead. What have you got to say, mate?
I was about to call you a rude prick because you were just completely talking over the top of me, and then I realised I was on mute. But I was going to say we're sort of in a similar spot, right? So Teamgate, we're obviously in the CRM industry, small fish, big pond, very competitive market. You guys are in the same space. So I think what you've said there, like, it's about finding a market that works. And for you, your referrals are obviously really strong. You've got Wotso on board, which is a massive name. So like Teamgate, we've had to go abroad and go from the Europe market into the US market. And it'd be good to see the how much success you guys have when you push into those markets. And I think a big thing that's going to help you guys is like social proofing, having the CEO of Wotso and what Wotso is, it's the biggest in Australia, New Zealand share space, and taking that to potential customers in the US, because depending on the market you're looking at, especially the US, it's all about, we spoke about trust before, right? So it's all about trust and social proofing, and using Wotso as an example is a way to build that trust. It's like, okay, well, if Wotso trusts them, if Wotso use them across 28 locations, maybe it's worth at least having a conversation. But Google ads and things like that, unfortunately for people like us, generally doesn't work, because we're just going to get outbidded by the big name players, and they're going to be spending millions of dollars on marketing. So finding that guerrilla market, finding those marketing techniques that work is the hardest part. But once you find a channel that works, lean into it and go as hard as you can. So, yeah. Do you want to talk now that I'm off mute?
No, it's fine. I think that's great, mate. Keep it up. I actually prefer you on mute. Could you be like that for the rest of the podcast?
Means I don't have to speak. It's good. I'm just going to go.
But I think the whole process that you look at is how you expand into further markets. As you said, I guess it's reasonably limited, the total addressable market within Australia. So it's interesting to see, how you look for growth and where you look to expand, whether that be verticals, getting into hotels. I'm not going to get into it, whether you've gone to speak to them just yet or what your pitch is going to be. I'll let you keep that in your back pocket for when you go and talk to those people. But it's really interesting to see how you look at expanding, whether it be geographical locations or whether it be by industry vertical. I think that's really cool for people to understand the different options that are available to seek that expansion that you look for in business. But you've been through a few businesses yourself. You've gone through in that startup life, living that life, and seeing it lose its runway and end up starting your own thing. What advice have you got for people who, let's just say they might be in their job at the moment and they're looking to start something, or potentially they've just started their own business, got out of their current, their full-time employment and started their own business? What advice would you give these people who are just starting out?
I'd say don't get too emotionally attached to any failure and that sort of thing. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that, what you did didn't work, right? I have like a laundry list of things that I've tried, just got nowhere. Hey, I'm a very curious guy, and I get excited about, different ideas a lot, right? And I just jump onto it, and I start going down that path, and then realize, oh, hang on, this is probably not going to work, But it's like, also, you've got to explore that, because otherwise you'll always be, oh, what if, So I think it's like, follow that to a point, but try and fail fast, right? We've heard that throughout the industry and that sort of thing. It's like, give everything a go, but, don't hold on to it for dear life if you know that it's sort of not getting anywhere for too long. That's, a double-edged sword though, right? You've got to be consistent, and you've got to ride the ups and downs of any business, and sometimes it's going to look super grim, right? But I've tried things from apps to just list events around you to we actually tried building an entire sailing business, to take people sailing around the Mediterranean, and really just stuff that's totally not related to what I do. And what I learned is like, trying to get into an industry that you don't have any idea about is really difficult. So, taking sort of side steps is a bit more of a logical way to go about it. But saying that, you can learn, apply a lot of your learnings from one industry to another, but there has to be some sort of connection, right? Try and play on your strengths.
Yeah, nice. I like that. That's good. Good. Awesome. I think the list of failures is an interesting one, right? Not taking it to heart, because it's all just about finding the right path as you go forward.
It goes back to your quote, Abe. As long as you know why.
Elon Musk had his rockets blow up. That's probably worse than whatever you failed at,
Exactly. And look at him now.
Captain rockets.
James, before we wrap up, where can our listeners find you? You're on socials. Obviously, Hamlet has a website. Where can they find you?
I'm not much into the whole social sphere, to be honest. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm there. I don't post all that much and that sort of thing. I probably should do more. Yeah, I've kind of strayed away from socials over the years because they're a bit of a time suck. And I try and put my time elsewhere. But reach out to me on LinkedIn. Totally happy to have a convo about anything.
Awesome, and if you're in the business for share spaces,
Facebook Messenger, didn't we? So
we did.
I was in one of the groups?
No idea. I joined about 1,000 in one day.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I
guerrilla
usually
marketing.
Ignore all of those things. But I just thought, oh hey, you're on the coast, so why not?
Catch up for a cute coffee date. Have
vanilla
latte.
He looks like he drinks lattes, so
vanilla lattes. Don't upgrade yourself to a latte.
Next time we'll try and look a bit more manly, and we'll go to
we'll
a
go to a
brewery
pub,
or something. Yeah.
There you go. There's a few around. Awesome. We'll drop your links. We'll drop the Hamlet Co website in the podcast notes for anyone out there looking to use it. Otherwise, like and subscribe on all of our socials. Beer and Business Pod. Someone needs to get back to posting our TikToks. They've gotten pretty slack.
Andrew.
Over the last few weeks, busy man, and they're definitely not going to be posted over the next 2 weeks while I'm in Texas. But anyway, Instagram, we're very active, so submit your questions, topics. If you've got any guests that you want to hear from, let us know. Otherwise, the podcast will be out weekly on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast.
Apple Podcasts as well.
Next, that's included wherever you get your podcast, Abe.
Next episode's really exciting because Andrew is actually going to be in the US. So
I will be.
He'll be drinking beers at normal time. I'll be drinking beers in the morning.
And I think we're going to have Chase. We're going to have Chase on the podcast. So Chase is my head of sales. We talk about him a lot on podcasts, and we're going to force him to.
Chase is going to tell us everything wrong with Andrew.
Yeah.
All the secrets will be out.
And then he'll be fired by Christmas.
James, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I know, you as a founder, you'll have a lot on, and carving out an hour or so to talk to us it means a lot to us, and I really appreciate it.
As well.
On short notice. So thank you so much. What started out as a cute little coffee date with some vanilla lattes to us drinking beer and you watching us drink beer is, pretty great for us, and we really appreciate you coming on and tell us about your experiences.
No, thanks for inviting me. It's been a great conversation, and I'm definitely a bit jealous about the beers, but maybe next time I can have one with you.
Awesome,
Sounds
James.
Good.
All right. Till next time. Cheers. I'm done.
Cheers, guys. Great to chat. Thanks.
Cheers.